hadn't planned to go out that morning. The cold wasn't kind to my knees and the scooter only cooperated when it felt generous. But the Red Oak Café served the only coffee strong enough to make me forget the ache for a few minutes. And Thursdays were still mine. Routine matters when the world forgets you. The sidewalk was dry. My gloves were worn but warm. I pushed through the door with the weight of someone who had learned long ago how to move with quiet intent. The cafe buzzed with soft chatter, old-timers in back booths, students tapping at laptops, the smell of cinnamon and frying bacon in the air. I made my way to my usual seat by the window. 3 young men occupied the corner table, ringed in camera gear and phones propped on stands. The kind of boys who laughed too loud and stared too long. TikTokers, maybe? Or whatever they call themselves now. One of them leaned close to whisper something. The other 2 burst out laughing. I kept moving. I've heard worse from people holding rifles. But then one rose. He walked by me slowly, as if stretching his legs, and with a quick, deliberate flick of his notebook, struck my elbow. I caught myself on the edge of the table, but the scooter wobbled. My coat twisted and my knee jarred against the side rail. "Old vet alert, let's get her to stand up for us," he crowed. A second boy lifted his tea and poured just enough to darken my shoulder. More laughter. "That chair got a kill count?" Another chimed in. A few heads turned. But no one said a word. Not the manager. Not the waiter who watched while folding napkins. I sat down. Straightened my coat. Looked out the window like nothing had happened. But I felt it. That quiet weight in the chest that doesn't show on scans. Then soft as breath I heard the lock click. The cafe door. Turning. Not slammed. Not forced. Just clicked shut. I turned my head. And everything changed. Some women wear their stories in photographs. I wear mine in silence. And scars I don't point to. I joined the army when I was 19. Didn't tell my father. Didn't need his permission. The recruiter said they needed medics. I said fine. But I also told him I could shoot. He laughed. Then I showed him. He stopped laughing. I trained with the medics first, tourniquets, IVs, filled dressings in under a minute, learned how to breathe steady under screaming, how to recognize shock by the shade of someone's lips. But after hours I stayed behind. Practiced marksmanship in wind and dusk. Hit paper targets so clean it looked like the bullet had asked permission. One day, a captain asked why I was still on the range. "Because I'm better than most of your men," I said. He handed me a new set of papers. Cross-training, sniper school. It raised eyebrows. Some of the men muttered. A few made bets. But I passed every test. Not because I had something to prove, but because precision isn't about ego. It's about control. About knowing when not to pull the trigger. I deployed to Iraq in 2005. They gave me a dual role. Officially, I was a combat medic. Unofficially, I was also Overwatch on high-risk evacuations. Saved lives both ways. Sometimes with morphine. Sometimes with lead. I remember one mission, Fallujah outskirts. We were extracting 2 wounded under heavy fire. I was crouched behind the wheel well of a burning Humvee, fingers pressed to a corporal's neck wound, whispering, "Stay with me," while tracking a rooftop 3 clicks out through my scope. Took the shot. Saved the team. Kept pressure on the wound. Same breath. They gave me a Bronze Star with Valor for that. Pinned it to my uniform with trembling hands. I didn't tremble because of nerves. I trembled because I knew I'd be expected to go back out the next day. When I came home, nobody asked what a woman like me had done. I didn't offer it. People hear combat medic and smile. They hear sniper and flinch. I preferred the smile. So I let the patch fade into my closet and picked up other work. Mentored teens at the community center. Helped vets fill out forms they couldn't read anymore. Walked the woods with local rangers to help track injured animals too quiet to be found by drones. It was enough. More than enough. Some of the boys at the cafe that morning probably passed one of my mints on the sidewalk last year. Maybe got food from a kitchen I helped fund. Maybe they filmed a prank beside the same woods I once cleared of tripwires. They didn't know. But ignorance isn't an excuse. They saw gray hair and wheels and thought that meant safe. Someone to mock. An easy post. A cheap laugh. I didn't reach for my phone that morning. Didn't raise my voice. Didn't curse or cry. I just sat. Wiped the tea from my sleeve. And reached beneath the padded seat of my scooter. Felt for the small, familiar bump. A square, worn button. Hard to see. Easy to miss. It wasn't connected to police. It didn't call for backup from town. It pinged a beacon. Something an old teammate had given me years ago. A signal that said, Need eyes. Now. I pressed it once. Then I waited. This wasn't the first time. Not for me. Not for others like me. A few weeks back, someone sent me a video. Another prank on an older vet, Marine I think. Dunk with soda at a bus stop. Laughed at for mumbling. Hundreds of thousands of views. Comments ranged from, El Mayo, to he's a hero, show some respect, but the laughter won. It always wins. That's what this new game was about, mocking dignity. Elderly veterans had become the punchline. And people defended it as humor. Managers said, we can't control everyone. Customers said, I didn't want to get involved. And the victims? They endured. Because we're trained to. Because somewhere deep down, we still believe the world will remember us the way it used to. That's the lie we carry quietly. I'd seen the signs creeping in even before that day. Clerks refusing to help when they saw my limp. Teenagers pretending to record a dance while filming me trying to lift groceries. A waitress rolling her eyes when I asked for a straw. They always looked surprised when I didn't smile. Like I was ruining their performance. At the Red Oak Café, that day was just the latest installment. The mocking. The shove. The stain on my coat. The door quietly shutting. It didn't even register with them, those boys. Their heads were still bent over their phones, fingers flying, reviewing their footage. They thought it was theirs. Their story. But it never was. I looked around the cafe. The barista behind the counter looked down, suddenly busy with whipped cream. The woman at the booth near the door gathered her purse and slipped out before things got uncomfortable. A man at a back table, the only one not pretending, watched closely. I'd later learn his name was Derek Fields. A podcast journalist. Former Army too. Still carried that quiet weight in his shoulders, like an unfinished deployment. He didn't pull out his phone to record. He didn't shout. He just waited. He'd seen the insignia on my scooter, 275th Ranger Rifle Company. Not many outside the circle would know it. But he did. He knew what it meant. Knew what it cost. And that's the thing. People like Derek, they see us. Not the limp. Not the wrinkles. The layers. The way we move slower not from weakness but from memory. We walk like survivors. Because we are. But that morning I didn't feel like one. I felt tired. I'd fought battles where the enemy wore uniforms and carried rifles. Now I was up against giggles and hashtags. And I had fewer tools. Fewer allies. Even the patch on my coat meant less these days. People used to stand for it. Now they scroll past it. Still, I sat straight. Wiped the tea from my coat one last time. And waited. Not because I wanted revenge. But because disrespect, left unanswered, becomes tradition. And I wasn't going to let that happen in my town. Not while I still breathed. The man in the navy blue fleece moved slowly. Not in age, but in awareness. He slid his phone into his pocket and stood. Didn't make a scene. Didn't rush over. Just angled his chair slightly toward the door and tapped out a message I couldn't see. His eyes swept the room, calculating, observant, the way you only learn to be in certain kinds of training. He didn't approach the boys. Didn't lecture. He knew better. He was waiting for something. And then it arrived. It started with a low rumble outside. Not tires squealing. Not sirens. A deeper sound, rubber on gravel, diesel steady and controlled. A shadow passed across the cafe window, long and wide. Then another. The three boys finally looked up. One of them laughed nervously. Is that? The second boy peeked through the blinds. Yo, those are military Humvees. The third swallowed. For real. I didn't move. Didn't smile. Didn't have to. A second later, the kitchen door, long unused except for deliveries, pushed open. He stepped out. Same lean frame I remembered, though time had carved deeper lines into his face. Major Sam Lawson. Back then, just Sam, my spotter, my compass, the one who whispered distance and wind speed while I adjusted breath and barrel. Now commanding officer of a special forces unit and still sharper than any edge you trust in the dark. He didn't yell. Didn't scowl. Just walked to the center of the room, removed his jacket and laid it carefully on the counter. His uniform underneath bore 2 MOS patches, combat medic and sniper. Same as mine. Behind him came the others. 6 soldiers, mixed ranks, dressed in civilian layers but unmistakably military in posture and presence. They didn't speak. Just took positions along the cafe walls, hands behind backs, feet shoulder-width, thighs forward. Not aggressive. Not hostile. Just present. Commanding. Major Lawson scanned the cafe once. Then looked at me. I nodded once, almost imperceptible. He turned to the boys. "No one leaves until this ends." That was all he said. And in that moment, every latte, every camera, every breath held inside that building froze. The boys looked around, looked for exits, but the front door was still locked. And the people who'd stayed? Now they watched. No more pretending. The boy who had knocked my elbow shifted in his seat. "Look, man, we were just messing around." Lawson raised a hand, barely a twitch, and the word stopped. He stepped forward. Didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. His tone held the weight of sandstorms and body bags in coordinates whispered under fire. She carried wounded soldiers on her back while taking sniper fire from rooftops you wouldn't dare walk past. No reply. She stitched men together in ditches while laying down suppressing fire with the rifle she cleaned blindfolded. Still no reply. And you poured tea on her coat. Silence. He turned to the cafe at large. To the staff. The customers. She didn't ask for anything this morning. Not recognition. Not thanks. Just a seat and a moment of peace. His eyes swept the room. "And you let this happen?" A few lowered their eyes. The barista behind the counter wiped away a tear. Lawson turned back to me. Walked forward. Extended a hand. I took it. Firm, steady. The room exhaled. He didn't let go right away. Major Lawson's grip was warm, steady, the kind you remember in the middle of a storm. His other hand reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope thick with creases. He handed it to me. "Your citation," he said. "For what?" I asked. He smiled tight, measured. "For all the things no one saw." I opened it slowly. Inside was a folded note on army letterhead, signed by 5 names I hadn't read in decades. My old platoon. Men who'd scattered like ashes after our last mission. Some still breathing. Some not. But their handwriting was there. Sharp. Honest. Each one had left a sentence. Lila never missed a shot, or a heartbeat. She carried me when my legs stopped. She was the last voice I heard before the chopper. She didn't just save lives. She stood up for them. She's the reason I made it home. My throat caught. I looked up. He nodded. Behind him, one of the soldiers moved quietly to the corner and handed the barista a folder. Inside were plans. Sketches. Colors. A mural. Already approved. Already commissioned. To be painted on the rear wall of the cafe, the same wall behind the boys' table. A figure kneeling. One hand on a precision rifle. The other cradling a medic's pack. The caption below it. She saved lives. She took aim. She stood undaunted. The boys didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their silence was enough. Major Lawson looked at them one last time. "You'll come back here next week," he said. "Not to apologize. That window's closed." They looked up, confused. "You'll come back to paint." And they did. For 3 weekends they showed up. Not filmed. Not coached. They cleaned the wall. Primed it. Helped the artists mix colors. One held a ladder. One filled brushes. One stood back, face flushed with something that looked like understanding. I watched from the other side of the street. Didn't interfere. Didn't offer comfort. Some lessons have to settle alone. The cafe manager approached me one morning. His eyes red. His voice unsure. "I didn't step in," he said. "Didn't know what to do." "You do now," I replied. He nodded. Then reached into his apron and pulled out a plaque. Small. Wooden. Hand-carved. He knelt beside my usual seat. Mounted it carefully under the window. Reserved for service. A few days later, the door of the cafe remained propped open. A new sign hung beside it. Civility isn't old-fashioned. Inside, a photo of the mural hung behind the counter. No names. No tags. Just the image. I came in each week. Had my coffee. Sat by the window. Some days people joined me. A veteran with trembling hands. A high school girl who asked about Fallujah for a school paper. A young man who used to laugh too easily, now quiet, now listening. Major Lawson stopped by once more. Said his unit was rotating again. Handed me another folded note, this one from his niece. She joined the army, he said. Cites you as her reason. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. The mural finished under a winter sun. Colors baked into brick, strong and solemn. The rifle in the image wasn't exaggerated. The medic's pack wasn't pristine. Both tools bore the quiet weight of use, just as they had when I carried them. The artist added something at the last minute. Near the boots of the figure, half concealed under a shadow, lay a folded letter. I never asked what it said. I already knew. The cafe changed. Not overnight. Not with fanfare. But with intent. Reserved for service wasn't just a plaque anymore. It became policy. Veterans drank free. Elders were greeted by name. That kind of reverence isn't performative when practiced daily. The students never came back as pranksters. Some returned quietly. Sat far from the mural. Read books. Tipped well. One even brought his grandfather in for lunch. I didn't interrupt their visit. Just watched as he pulled out a chair, waited patiently, listened. Something had changed in him. Maybe enough? The podcast journalist, Derek, ran an episode about that day. Called it The Weight of a Pause. He didn't name me. Didn't name the cafe. Just told the story, the silence, the soldiers, the boys, the door locking soft as justice. The episode went viral. Messages poured in. From veterans. From medics. From mothers and daughters. One note came from a woman in Kansas. My grandmother was a field nurse in Vietnam. She died before I asked her anything. Thank you for sitting still so others could remember. I printed it out. Taped it inside the cabinet next to my coffee mugs. Sam called once more. Said he was heading overseas again. This time as an observer. He sounded tired but lighter. I think they remember now, he said. Some do, I replied. And the rest? They will. I started receiving letters again. Handwritten. Stamped. Ink smudged with care. People asking about how to listen better. How to teach their kids about service without glamour. One man asked what it felt like to carry a rifle and a heartbeat in the same hands. I told him. It feels like being split between mercy and defense and learning to do both without hesitation. He wrote back. I read that out loud at my daughter's school. They clapped. That winter, the town council invited me to speak at the memorial service. I declined the microphone. Chose instead to sit on the same cafe bench where I'd once been mocked. They placed a wreath beside me. A child read a poem about courage. A woman wept near the mural. No one recorded. No one interrupted. The quiet held. Weeks later, a girl knocked on my door. Young. 17 maybe. Said she was thinking of enlisting. Asked if she could interview me. I let her in. Made tea. We talked for hours. About things I hadn't shared in years. Not the battles. The in-betweens. The patching up. The waiting. The wait. Before she left, she turned back and said, I didn't know heroes could limp. I smiled. Heroes don't limp, I said. They pace themselves. She laughed. Saluted, awkward, sincere, and walked away. They thought I was just an old woman. Just a scooter and a jacket and a limp through town. They didn't know the distance between memory and movement, or the echo of rifles in blood-soaked sand, or what it means to hold a life in your hands, sometimes to heal it, sometimes to stop another from taking it. They spilled tea like children testing limits. But the army didn't come for them. The army came for me. Not to defend me. To remind them that the ones who walk quietly are often the ones who built the ground they're standing on. I walk less now, but I sit more deeply. At that cafe window, I watch people come and go. Some pause at the mural. Some sit at the reserved for service booth without knowing why, then rise without touching their drinks. They feel something. They may not name it, but they carry it. Respect isn't loud. It's not a hashtag. It's the way you hold a door. The way you wait a second longer before laughing. The way you look someone in the eyes even if they're old or tired or moving slow. My name is Lila Stone. I've carried a rifle and a medic's bag. I've fired and I've stitched. I've been saluted and ignored. But in that cafe on that cold morning, I reclaimed something simple. A space. A silence. A truth. That dignity isn't something we earn once. It's something we must defend every day, whether with armor or with stillness. And sometimes the fiercest battles are fought with nothing more than the choice to sit and not look away.